Next, we have our South Yuba City Annexation Election. We have Darren Gale presenting.
Good evening, Mayor Didball and council members. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening. Darren Gale, the Economic Growth and Public Affairs Manager, and I am the project manager on our South Yuba City annexation process, which is a number of years in the making. Tonight, I'm before you to what's before you tonight is to approve or a proposal for a resolution to initiate an election as part of the June primary election that would be held on June 5th of 2018, and to authorize the finance director to make a supplemental appropriation for $40,000. That is the item. That being stated, Mayor, if you would like, I could give a little bit additional background on the annexation for residents who might tune in this evening to watch.
I think that would be great.
So first, this is a map of the area. The area is in South Yuba City. The areas are on the north side. That boundary is Franklin Road. On the south is Bogue Road. And on the west side, you have the Gil-Sizer Slough in some areas that kind of are the boundaries. And on the east side, it's a variety of streets. It's kind of mixed match. I'd actually say as you drive in these areas, you don't really tell the difference if you're in the city or county. And part of that reason being is you'll actually see our city vehicles there because we provide water service to any resident who has city service who's not on a well. Additionally, we already provide these residents fire services. As I mentioned, the LAFCO process, we've gone through the process. We've gotten to the point in May of 2017 to move forward with an election, and actually here in January, they actually extended and gave us one additional year to move forward with an election, and we've brought forward the resolution for council's consideration tonight. Since that time, we've held numerous public meetings. We've heard concerns from residents. Unfortunately, many do not attend these meetings. We've had a very small few, but one of the things that we would do if the council moved forward with an election, a portion of the funds that are being authorized or allocated for this process would be for some public outreach. And our job is to ensure residents have correct information. Unfortunately, there's a lot of false information out there, and we just want residents to be able to know exactly what the impacts of an annexation would be on their home, on their property, and then they get to make a determination if they think it's in their best interest or not. We actually held 4 different meetings. We held a couple before, but then we held 4 very specific to issues. The police departments, public works, planning, development services, administration, and public safety. So actually police and fire together. It's been over a year since we've held those meetings. We will continue to have a couple of outreach meetings to educate residents on the process and what impacts they would have. I'll go back. I know you can't read this, but on this brochure, it asks kind of those general questions that a resident might ask, like, is the city going to raise my property taxes? Actually, I usually don't hear the question. I'm usually told the city's going to raise my property taxes. That's not true. That cannot occur unless there is actually a vote of the people, and there would be no change. The question is related to public service or public safety. Will public safety be improved? And we definitely say there's the Sheriff's Department does a really great job, but they are limited as relates to staffing. They have literally just a few deputies that are on in the evenings that are patrolling all the way down to the Sacramento County border, all the way north to the Butte County border, a 608 square mile area that they're servicing with literally 3, and I've been told sometimes as low as 2 deputies that are patrolling that area in the evenings. Whereas the city, currently we have 5 police beats and a sergeant, so that would be 6 total officers actively patrolling a 15 square mile area versus 3 people trying to respond to calls on a 608 square mile area. Other questions that get asked, am I going to have to connect to water and sewer? No. it's the simple, easiest way. Actually, nothing changes as relates to your well and your sewer system. It's still the Environmental Health Department at the county oversees that if you are in the city or in the county. So this is a mailer that we've sent out, and I'm sure we'll send out more information so that people just have information so they can make a determination. So why did the council move forward with this? I would say really it's about the efficient use of government funds. The city nearly surrounds this entire area and on 3 sides, and the city provides a full service around it, and it is an efficient use of dollars to provide all services to this area. There's been a lot of discussion about the master tax exchange agreement and reaching this 82% threshold. Even without that, it is still in the best interest, and dollars can be spent most efficiently by these residents being provided the full service of city services. What are those services? They're already being provided, like I said, fire, water services, and some even have sewer connections. Obviously, law enforcement, building and planning, code enforcement, street maintenance, parks, and rec. And in this area, actually, the majority of properties are, they have a septic system. And they'll continue to be on that septic system. If that septic system fails, if they're in the city or not in the city, they would still have to go to the county environmental health department to actually permit a new section. I talked a little bit about the police department, our 5 beats. If this area would annex into the city of Yuba City, the city would add 5 new public safety staff. That would be 5 sworn officers, 1 community service officer, and 1 dispatcher. That alone is a significant increase in public safety for this area. And not only would city residents benefit, I would actually state that that incorporated areas would see a benefit too, because they wouldn't have to respond to as many calls within the Walton area, the South Yuba City, and South Yuba City area, which would be taken over by the city. What are some of the community concerns? Some of them we can answer, some we can't. One of them is, I just hate government. I hate city. I don't have a response for that. But we try to find out what are the issues, what are the concerns that they might have? What's their fire service like? What's their water service? I've already talked about connecting to sewer, installing sidewalks. We will not be installing sidewalks. However, if they want to pay to install their own sidewalks, the city will help them through that process. The marijuana ordinance, there's actually been a state law that's been passed now. Our local codes are the same in the county or within the city. Burn piles. People say, well, I'm in a rural area. I'm able to have burn piles. There is no change. This is still overseen by our local air district, and burn piles are not allowed. Already talked about police services and raising my taxes. Code enforcement. The city is reactive to complaints as relates to code enforcement. Most of the codes are very, very similar. For example, the issue that Mr. Estrada brought up related to trailers is exactly the same in the county as it is in the unincorporated portions of the county as it is in the city. What are some differences? Number one, the city has a business license. On average, most home-based businesses have a business license that's in the $50 range. If a business is located within this area and is doing business in the city, they should already have a business license, so there would be no change. That being said, this is something new. We've been very open and honest to let people know if you have a home-based business, you need to make sure that you have a business license. An alarm permit. Right now, in the city of Yuba City, we do have an alarm permit. It is for 3 years, and a round number is $42. The city of Yuba City, as part of this, would give the person their first alarm permit, which is 3 years, for free. They'd have to come in and apply for it, but that is a new cost to a residence. So the question is, well, why? Well, one of our number one calls that our police department has is responding to bad false alarms. And right now, as I talked with the deputy in the sheriff's department, he says, we will respond to an alarm call, and we have no way of determining other than doing a visual check and we go away, say, oh, well, it's a false alarm. In our case, we actually are able to actually call the property owner, the person that the alarm is registered to, and to verify that something is not occurring in their home while they're away. Because there are times that false alarms happen when people aren't there. We have contact information for whoever is servicing their alarms. Farm animals, there are very similar ordinances as it relates to that, as in the unincorporated county as it relates to this area in the city. You can't have roosters in the city, no hooved animals. However, if someone already had it, for example, Mrs. Siller has horses within right behind Honda, she'd be grandfathered in. She can maintain those horses and have them there. And it's one of the things that we've actually talked to her about. And then I would say one additional thing is currently under the contract that we have for solid waste as it relates to ecology, people that live in this area currently do not have to have garbage service. What does that mean? That means sometimes people just toss garbage over their backyard fence, and it becomes a code enforcement issue. In the city, it's actually required to have garbage pickup. So that is a change. I'm in that area. I've yet to talk to a resident that believes that is actually a bad thing, that we require someone to have a garbage service. And then and then I have on here Hun Road. There are residents along Hun Road who have a strong feeling that if they came into the city, Hun Road would be opened and you would connect actually into the school, into St. Isidore's. That is not allowed. It's not actually the project as it was conditions of approval. It had to be closed. There is access. There's a gate there. We continue to work with the property owners as if we hear there are problems, and continue to work with the church whenever there are problems. One of the issues for the Hun Road folks, though, is they call and say, they get picked up by dispatch, not city's dispatch, because they live in the unincorporated portions of the county, and they're calling to complain about an issue in St. Isidore's. And there are times where there's slow responses as a result of the county not informing the city related to those issues. So these are just a few concerns. I just wanted to at least bring them out there so that residents have an understanding that there are not going to be huge changes, but they should see improvements in some areas, public safety being really one of the keys. Again, if this area was to annex, the city of Yuba City would hire 7 new public safety officers, which would be 5 sworn officers, a community service officer, and a dispatcher. At this time, I can answer any questions you might have. I do know that we have Bob Renton, who lives in Live Oak, who would love to talk about this item this evening.
Thank you, Darren. Any questions for Darren from council at this time? No? Okay. All right. We have a written request from Mr. Renton.
I don't know if you got, you get the font. No, that's not my file.
No.
No, it's either one that's on there. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Renton. I reside near Live Oak, and our family home since 1955 on Hun Road is now my property, and I have spent most of the last 3 months on Hun Road at that house. Now, I've heard Mr. Gale in the text of the comments for tonight indicate charges of misinformation. And I've been hearing that claim that we have been spreading misinformation to my neighbors about this annexation, that we tell people that they may have to hook up, that they will have to pick up to city water or city sewer. And I will swear to you, everyone here, that I have never done that. I have actually encountered some residents who feared that. So I tried my best to inform them that the city would not force them to hook up. Some remain convinced, so I asked them to contact Mr. Gale or the city. Now, if anyone has direct knowledge of this misinformation, I would like to have them give me enough information so that I can investigate. I've asked Mr. Gale. Mr. Gale has claimed several times that he had heard reports of misinformation, not directly apparently. So he only would say that they came from Pelora Avenue. That's the most detail I've ever gotten out of Mr. Gale. So I sent an email to all of our volunteers asking them to stick to our published handout. And if anybody has any questions about city water or sewer, they should call the city. Excellent. Thank you. Now, regarding fire service and Yuba City's unrecovered cost to the service area G. Service area G is the area outside Yuba City, and it includes the 1 square mile of the South Yuba City area annexation, proposed annexation. Now, I want to thank Chief Daly for this graphic when he reported this to you 2 years ago, so this is slightly dated. The annex area, or the keyhole area, is circled in blue at the bottom. And it is on an area basis, it's only 6% of your total unrecovered cost of the area, of the service area G cost, which I believe was in the range of $130,000. So 6%, I think it worked out to about $10,000. Now, regardless of how you look at it on an area basis or not, it's still a fairly small area. Small percentage of your unrecovered cost. And now Yuba City seems to want to annex their way out of this problem with this subsidy situation. This problem started in 2001 when Yuba City merged Walton Fire Department into Yuba City. This is a city management problem that has been going on for 17 years. And we will not be a whipping boy for the council on a problem that was created in 2001 by prior management, not blaming current management. The merger agreement called for a simple exchange of pro rata property taxes. And that would have stayed, those taxes would have stayed with Sutter County, but they turned those over to you. That agreement has been provided to Yuba City staff, and they have had plenty of time to review it. Maybe they would like to comment. There will not be $1 increase in funds to Yuba City Fire Department if an annexation occurs. Only the city limit boundaries will change. So go ahead and waste another $40,000 of Yuba City taxpayer money. In the end, this effort will fail. Our volunteers contacted many of their neighbors and found overwhelming opposition. I have tracked all of those contacts over the last 2 years and maintain a database on my computer. The bottom line is very simple. If you want to provide Yuba City Police to the Walton area, you will need to change the trigger point in that tax agreement. Just meet with the county and renegotiate to the 70% trigger level. That's where you stand right now. Our opposition is already planning improvements for the next 3 months before any vote and any future annexation attempts. I thank the audience and the council for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? We'll bring it back to the council. Any questions, any discussion, or a motion to move?
To the mayor. You know, when we start talking about service area G and city residents paying $1, a simple $1 more for someone else's coverage, that is a problem to me, regardless if it's only 6% or minimized with some figure that is provided by Mr. Renton at $130,000 for the larger geographical area. I find it problematic in assuming that the residents of Yuba City owe this area any coverage. Whether it was the Walton merger or whatever, one of the things that I look at is simply undoing that. These areas, if they don't want city service, can go back to county services, county fire. You can get your fire trucks from Tudor. That's fine with me. If you want the city service, you're going to pay for the city service. And, you know, a vote on the whole issue, on this whole issue is also bothersome to me. In the sense that property owners are left out of the equation on a large percentage of the properties that are under rent or being rented in this proposed annex area. To have the annexation be voted on by registered voters in that area tends to leave the property owners out. They get no say in this. So they have a rental. Their renter gets to decide whether they're in or out of the city. So from that fundamental standpoint, I have an issue with it. And when we look at the potential of service area G that Mr. Renton thinks he's owed for some reason from an agreement made years ago, if there was an increase or a push to increase an assessment through a ballot measure with the property owners, it would be the property owners deciding whether or not they were going to pay a higher assessment for their fire protection, which I believe they're obligated to do when they don't live within an area served by municipal services or contribute to those those services in any other way than a reduced amount of money that doesn't cover all of the costs. And again, the citizens of Yuba City are responsible or have taken that on as a cost sharing with the residents in that area. So I have a big issue with the property owners in an annexation proposal not having a right. They're being disenfranchised by the process. But yet, if the choice were to be taken to not annex in, I'd be the first person saying, we need to get out of the service area G business of providing fire protection if they don't want to pay the full amount. And that vote would be done by the property owners. So I guess I'm really perplexed by how the system has gotten to this point when we look at our decision-making process that truly affects how property owners will respond, potential of being inside the city, whether it increases or decreases their property values, the other assets that they could have access to, the infrastructure, should systems fail, to increased maintenance of roadways. When Mr. Gale said that you can't tell the difference in many cases driving down streets, I beg to differ. I live on a street that I enter it in the city. It's in great shape. There's a section 3 houses away from my house that goes into the county. That road surface is deteriorating at a greater degree than what the city streets are because the county has come in and done simple crack filling, where the city has actually done some cape sealing to the roadways to extend the life of the roadways. So I do take exception to some of that. The city residents are proud residents. They own, this is their city. This isn't the 5 of us and the city manager and Darren Gale or any elected official. this is a city residents' city. They get to choose how it's taken care of and how it's maintained. And I believe that they do a really good job of being participants in this fine city. Unfortunately tonight, I stand on a firm resolution that while I support 100% an effort to annex this area, I cannot and will not support an election that disenfranchises the property owners themselves. So tonight, you're going to see me vote in opposition to moving forward, and it's not opposition to the annexation; it's opposition to the process.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns?
I have just a little bit of historical stuff regarding the first time that annexation was attempted. And I felt at that time that some of the concerns were somewhat legitimate, that Yuba City was not ready, that they didn't convince the citizens that they could provide the services well that were being promoted to be provided. And I remember that time was quite volatile. And at that time, I kind of agreed that they weren't ready. Having served 8 years at the county and knowing what rural level of services is and is not, I have to agree at this time with Councilman Buckland that the roads, the drainage, many of the needed utilities and infrastructure are absent. There are areas where drainage is just absolutely horrid when you have heavy rains. The city actually makes sure that that's done or recommends ways for citizens to get together to create drainage districts to address those things. The county has no interest in doing any of that. They want to just barely maintain at a rural level of standard. And that was very plainly stated when we did the new general plan update when I was a supervisor. Rural level of services, we're not in the urban business. So the only thing I can say to that is that deterioration of the infrastructure in that area will be more likely than not. I'm not saying they're going to ignore or grossly let things happen, but they're not. Their task is not to have urban level of services, curbs, gutters, sweepers, and the types of things that in a city where as you're typically find. So coming from my past experience, it's a complete different world of providing of services than what the city typically would have, and people want a little bit nicer services done. At this time, having seen that and not participated very much, but watching it, one of the firm comments I have made throughout the planning of this to happen was we have to be able to prove that we can provide services and that we can afford to do this and that we will do it. And I 100% believe that we've proven ourselves. In fact, I think that especially this council at this time, or at least over the last 3 or 4 years, we have proven ourselves to be faithful. We have proven ourselves to be very strong in raising the standards and using the funds that we have in ways that have raised the standard of living, the quality of life in Yuba City. So much that we have businesses that are saying, we want to come here. We have businesses that are expanding. We have the state and other governments that have funding that are saying, hey, you guys are doing something good there. We want to, stick with you because we think we can trust your word. And yet, this little area here at this time seems to just say, we hate government. And I think that's all it is. We hate government. We don't want to have government. Well, you have government, and I think it's woefully inadequate on your infrastructure and your future there, that it will deteriorate just for the purpose that it is a rural standard in an urban area. It doesn't work. Over time, it just deteriorates. That's a natural order of it. Otherwise, they're going to have to take money from those farm roads out there that they need and put it into your area, and those farmers are not going to like that. And I think they'll have a lot to say. I'm really befuddled as to why the resistance myself. I absolutely have heard no legitimate resistance arguments compared to what was tried in the early 2000s. There's so little there compared to then that I don't understand. It does not make any logical sense as to the resistance that's being put up now. And that's all based on history, all based on fact. So I agree with John on the principle of voting based upon landowner, but I also I'm going to have to support moving forward myself, though. So we need something out here so that we can figure out where we're standing with the community.
Anything else? No? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Recommended A, adopt resolution initiating annexation proceedings for the area known as South Yuba City, calling for a municipal election. B, approve an agreement with Sutter County to consolidate services for the election to be held on Tuesday, June 5th, 2018. C, authorize the financial director to make a supplemental appropriations of $40,000 to account number 1710-62701, the city clerk elections, from unallocated fund balance.
I'll second.
Okay. Can we get a roll call, please? Yes.
Vice Mayor Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Buckland,
No.
Councilmember Cardoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Cleveland.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's 4-1, so we will move forward with that. Thank you.